شبير حسين ابن غلام حسين مؤمن غلام علي ابن عزيز شيرازي عليا سيد بنت أصغر علي سيد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فاستجاب لهم ربهم أني لا أضيع عمل عامل منكم من ذكر أو أنثى. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Illuminate your hearts, your souls in this majlis with the remembrance of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In 2003, a Somali-born Dutch citizen by the name of Ayaan Hirsi Ali, she gained national prominence as she ran for a seat in the Dutch parliament. Her campaign was nothing special. She did not introduce or legislate a groundbreaking solution for poverty. She was not interested in revolutionizing the workforce industry in the Netherlands. Nothing of that sort. Rather, what gave her fame, what gave her prominence, what gave her the attention from the media was something else. You see, Ayaan Hirsi Ali was a former Muslim. And once she left the religion of Islam, she began campaigning to eradicate the religion of Islam from any public forum, in the Netherlands. And so she gave so many people what they wanted to hear. And so she gained fame, she gained attention. She was suddenly invited to universities to give speeches. Her books became bestsellers. She was invited into rooms of policy, think tanks, and whatnot. And she became a public figure, influencing millions of people. All because she was against the religion of Islam. And her biggest issue with the religion of Islam, according to her, was the way Islam treats women. And she genuinely believed, and continues till this day, perhaps, she believed that the best way to serve the women of the Netherlands is to make sure that Islam stays away from them. And they're not influenced by the idea of Islam, by the religion of Islam. And that, brothers and sisters, highlights to us a very important thing that is happening in today's world. A phenomena that's happened and continues to happen, and that is, aside from the Islamophobia that we're addressing, is the way Islam is perceived, especially when it comes to the matters of women. And the question that is often posed, or the thesis that is often posed, is that Islam oppresses women. And the reality, brothers and sisters, in the past 50, 60 years, the thought process and the status and the role of women has changed drastically over the past 50, 60 years. And a lot of it has to do with the modern feminist movement. And the moment you disagree with this movement, the moment you have a different idea, the moment you have a different paradigm, you're canceled, you're labeled, you're considered to be misogynistic, you're considered to be backward thinking, you're considered to be every single label that they give us. Because Islam, and we're not shy of this, Islam often disagrees with this movement. Islam is often not compatible with the modern feminist movement. And the moment you disagree, regardless of your reasoning, regardless of what your thought process is, regardless of the logical arguments that you set forth, they cancel you. And so today, in the short few minutes that we have, as we commemorate Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, and we commemorate the legacy of the one who continued the mission of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein after him, and that is Bibi Zainab Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra, it is important for us to analyze the role of women, the status of women in the religion of Islam. We have to address this very specific question. Does Islam oppress women? But before we do so, we need a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before we're able to address this issue, we have to understand the very root cause of the issue. If you don't tackle the root cause, the issue will always continue. You won't be able to tackle it sufficiently if you don't address the cause. And the cause, brothers and sisters, stems from the fact that the feminist movement, from its early days, had urged people to get themselves rid of the shackles, what they call the shackles of gender roles. Gender roles to them are a social construct, something that needs to be eradicated, something that needs to be eliminated. And they reached a point in their advocacy, ironically, to the point that they cannot even tell you what a man is and what a woman is. If you ask some of the licensed therapists that we have in America, in the United States of America, if you ask people who hold PhDs in academia teaching our kids, our youth in the universities, if you ask them a very simple question, what is a man? What is a woman? Their answer will not be based on biology. They'll tell you a man is whoever identifies as a man. And a woman is whoever identifies as a woman. And so if John decides to be Linda, society will accept him as Linda. And Linda is now a woman, a female. No one has the right to call Linda John. And so they've even taken it a step further beyond just gender roles, of eliminating this construct that is based on biology. And so that's where Islam disagrees. Islam makes it very clear there are two genders. Whatever term you want to use, regardless of how fancy you want to be, there's only two things that men and women come from. Human being comes from man and women. And if you're a man, you will remain a man until the day of judgment. And if you're a woman, you will remain a woman until the day you die. That's how it works. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basing this on biology. The religion of Islam is basing this on biology. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear. Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. O mankind, we have created you from man and woman. In another verse, the Holy Quran says, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. And a man is not like the woman. And we can see it with our very own eyes. Physically, a man is different from a woman, and a woman is very different from a man. But even beyond the physical appearance, there are scientific studies by the best universities in today's world that illustrate to us the many differences between the man and the woman. Amongst them is a study that was conducted by Harvard University in 2013. They analyzed many of the human brains. There was a large number of brains that they studied. And based on the study, they made the following conclusions. They found that, for example, a man uses, or the connections between the left and the right hemisphere of a man's brain, they don't communicate with each other as often as the women do. So the neurons in the right side of the brain communicate more with the right side of the brain. And the left side of the brain communicates more with the left side of the brain. What that does is it helps men with motor skills, with spatial skills. And therefore, you find so many men attracted to mechanical work, to engineering. While on the other hand, if you look at the numbers of women in this field, it's not that much. Because biologically, men, and this is a general rule, there's of course exceptions, but biologically, men are geared more towards motor and spatial work. On the other hand, when you analyze the brain of women, it tells you, the study tells you that the woman's brain, the right hemisphere speaks more to the left hemisphere, and the left hemisphere speaks more to the right hemisphere than each other. So a neuron on the left, chances are it's speaking more to the right than on the same side. And that helps them with multitasking. And therefore you see it within our home households. MashaAllah, the mother, the wife, is more able by nature, in general, to multitask than the men. You see them, they're taking care of the kids, they're perhaps working remote, they're cooking, they're cleaning, they're on the phone all at the same time. And they're able to think straight. But give that task to a man. Tell a man, work and take care of the kids. Chances are the house is going to be a mess that day. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us differently. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has wired our brains differently. But that does not mean that a man is better than a woman. And that does not mean that the woman is better than a man. No. They have different sets. They have different qualities. But they're suitable to one another. They complement one another. They perfect one another. And therefore, in the union of marriage, a man completes half of his deen. We have to contemplate more upon that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But regardless, people perceive this stance by Islam, and it's backed up by science, to mean that a man in the religion of Islam is looked upon more favorably. But that's not the case. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The most noble of you in the eyes of Allah the best of you in the eyes of Allah, the most favored of you in the eyes of Allah is the most pious. It has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. It has nothing to do with being rich or poor. It has nothing to do of whether being Pakistani or Indian or Iraqi or American. It has nothing to do with that. The only criteria is this piety. But the issue, brothers and sisters, when Islam is often attacked like this, the reality is that those people who attack Islam and accuse Islam of being an oppressive religion towards women often don't understand the role of Islam in supporting women, in understanding women, of highlighting the role of a woman, of raising the status of a woman in society. If you want to understand that, look at the role of a woman before the religion of Islam in Arabia and after the religion of Islam. In Sahih al-Bukhari, so this is accepted by most Muslims across the world. The second Khalifa himself, he admits. He says, كنا في الجاهلية ما نعد للنساء من أمر حتى أنزل الله فيهن ما نزل وقسم لهم ما قسم. He says, pre-Islam, we would not even consider women to be a thing in society. The slaughter is something. Women in Arabia were considered to be nothing. Until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came down with their rights. We all know this verse in the Holy Quran, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. And when the infant is asked on the day of judgment, this baby infant, why were you killed by your parents? They would bury their own daughters in their own hands. One day a man comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. And he embraces the religion of Islam. After embracing it, he looks to the Prophet. He tells him, Ya Rasulullah, does this mean that all of my sins are forgiven? The Prophet tells him, yes, of course. He tells him, but Ya Rasulullah, I committed a sin that is not describable. The Prophet tells him, don't worry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives you. He tells him, Ya Rasulullah, let me tell you what I did so you can reassure me one more time. Tells him, one day I had a business trip and I left my house for a few years. It was a long trip. Back then they were traveling by camel, so naturally if you're a merchant, you'll be away from home for many years. He says, I left home, I came back 4 years later. As I enter, I meet my wife and she's happy that I'm back, and I see a young girl in the house. And so I ask my wife, who is this? She tells me, don't worry, this is the daughter of the neighbor. She's only here to have fun and she'll be back. She'll be out in a few hours. She says, okay, I didn't think much of it. But then it becomes nighttime and I realize, I think to myself, this child is not leaving the house. She's definitely not the neighbor's. And so I ask my wife. She tells me, this is our daughter. Don't you remember I was pregnant before you left? And now she's 3 years old, 3 years and a few months. He says, when she told me that, it's as if they put an entire mountain upon my chest. I wasn't able to draw a single breath. And I tried to convince myself. We went to bed that night and I couldn't sleep. Until I was fed up in the middle of the night without waking up my wife. I stand up, I wake my daughter up, and I tell her, Baba, we have to leave. I take her far away from the house in the middle of the desert. She's holding my hand. And I begin to dig. And she begins to dig with me. And then he says, I hold her, Ya Rasulullah, and I put her in the hole. The narration says the Prophet is weeping now. He knows where this is going. And I won't continue the story, but he says to the Prophet, he says, at one point, Ya Rasulullah, when I put her and I'm putting the dust back, dust happens on my beard, she begins to wipe my beard for me. This, brothers and sisters, was the status of women before Islam. When you have people that did not even dignify women, a woman would be considered lucky if she lived. But the religion of Islam came to protect the second half of society. 50% of our community, the mothers, the sisters in our community, to preserve their dignity, to raise their status, to shed the role on their importance. And the holy religion of Islam talks about this. It says, وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ يَتَوَارَى مِنْ سُوءِ مَا بُشِّرَ بِهِ يتوارى من القوم من سوء ما بشر به يمسكه على هون أم يدسه بالتراب. The Quran is saying when some of them receive the glad news, the glad tidings, bushir, bishara, they tell them this glad news, this wonderful news that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with a daughter. Their face turns black. They're worried. They're not able to sleep. And they begin to hide away from society as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them a shame in the house. That's how they perceived it. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi came to change this understanding. And he says, خَيْرُ أَوْلَادِكُمْ الْبَنَاتِ. The best of your children are your daughters. The religion of Islam changed that understanding. And if we find it within ourselves, if we find it within our community, we should not remain silent. If you find that someone is wanting to have, there's sometimes pressure by the family, is it a boy or a girl? The moment they hear the girl, they're like, no, she's not good. She's not a good wife. She did not give you a boy. But that's wrong, brothers and sisters. The Prophet himself, he says, the best of your children are your daughters. And so the religion of Islam came to highlight the importance of women. But yes, the religion of Islam, when giving out responsibilities, a man's responsibility is different than the woman's responsibility, based on the religious and based on the scientific explanations that we had, and that are very readily available to everyone to see. And so Islam tells the man, you have some responsibilities, and the woman, you have some responsibilities, and you should help one another. For example, in 2014, when ISIS invaded Iraq, and Sayyid al-Sistani, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prolong his life, he issued the famous fatwa of defending your home country, your land, the land of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and the Imams. The fatwa applied to who? Did it apply to the women? No. The fatwa applied to the men. Why? Because in the religion of Islam, when jihad is applicable, when you have to defend your home country, it is only applicable to the men, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want the women to go there and fight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects the man to be responsible to defend the household, to defend the country, to defend the city. That's one difference. When it comes to finances, regardless of how rich the woman is, if she's a billionaire, and I'm saying billionaire with a B, she's as rich as Elon Musk. But if she marries a man that is living on minimum wage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still expect the man who gets $10, $15 an hour to spend on the billionaire. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want a woman to be forced to work. If she wants to work, ahlan wa sahlan, she's more than welcome to. But if she does not want to work, she does not want to participate in the finances, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want a woman to be subject to humiliation, to have her dignity removed. Any of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to protect them. And so the religion of Islam came to protect women, to highlight the importance of women. But some people misunderstand it. And if someone understands the religion of Islam to say that women cannot work, that's a wrong understanding of the religion of Islam. A woman can seek education, can learn, she can go to university, she can go to college, she can have a job as long as it's within Islamic environment. And the same applies to the man. If a man is working in a non-Islamic environment and something that is taking him away from Allah, any scholar will tell him you should not work in that position. And it's not different from a man or a woman. And so these are some of the differences. And now some people have a question regarding this following verse. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. Some people understand this verse to mean that men are better than women. They say قوامية, قوامون. This is a common misconception. Having responsibility towards something does not mean that you're better than someone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the men across all times, but especially to the men of Arabia, the men who used to bury their children with their own hands. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them, by the way, if you want to believe in the religion of Islam, you have a responsibility to your wife. You have a responsibility to your children, to your daughters. You have no right to do any of the abuse that you used to do to them. And so that's the meaning of qawamun. It means that you have a responsibility towards them, financially, emotionally. Because usually the men, especially at that time, were lacking in that department. They were not keeping up with their responsibilities. They were not treating their wives as human beings. And then the other question is, بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Some understand this to mean that men are better than women. No. The Quran is saying, بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضُهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored some of them over some of them. Okay, favored some of who? Let's analyze, let's dissect this together. Some of who? Some of the men over some of the women. Okay, if it's some of the men over some of the women, that also means that some of the women are better than some of the men. Problem solved. It's that simple. But sometimes people want to give a different narrative about the religion of Islam. They have different agendas against the religion of Islam. Because to them, the religion of Islam threatens them. Because this modern feminist movement, if you analyze it, it began wanting to give rights to women. But now this very movement is the movement that is objectifying women. That is telling women, if you want to gain standards in society, you should not wear a hijab, you should not wear modest clothing, you should show more of your skin, you should show more of your body. And we've reached a level where a woman's dignity is based on that today, in today's society. A woman's importance is based on that. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. The following verse that we're about to address is also a common question that many people have. You might have all heard of the wife beating verse. This verse that many Islamophobes talk about. The Quran says that you can beat your wife. And they highlight this verse in the Holy Quran, and the Holy Quran says, وَضْرِبُوهُنْ, and you may hit them. And so they obviously go on Google Translate, they put وَضْرِبُوهُنْ, and it translates to, and you may hit them. But the actual response to that, before anyone can justify doing such a heinous act, is the Quran uses the word اضرب in 6 different meanings. I'll give you an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة. Allah sets forth an example. ضرب here means sets forth an example. Allah is giving an example. Another verse, وَضَرَبْنَا عَلَىٰ آذَانِهِمْ, and we have made their ears to be deaf. Did Allah hit their ears? Did Allah hit their ears? No, they became deaf. Did Allah hit an example? No, Allah sets forth an example. And so the word اضرب does not translate necessarily to what? To hit. And so many scholars have understood this, especially in today's age, understood this as what? As a way to stay away from your wife if you have a problem. So the Quran says, if there's a problem, talk it out. If it's still continuing, one of the things that you can do is separate from one another for a simple amount of time. If you're angry and she's angry, both of you can't think straight, stay away, cool down for a second, and then come back and speak to one another. Don't let emotions run high. But this verse sometimes is called the what? The wife beating verse. وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. صلوا على آل محمد. And so, in a nutshell, the religion of Islam protects women, dears women, cares for women, highlights the importance of women, and without dignified, honorable, pious women, a society would not function. If any of us, the reason I tell you, I don't know many of your personal lives, but I can guarantee you, and you know this, if you did not have a pious mother, chances are you would not be here. Very rarely do you find someone coming to the majalis of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam if their mother did not love Abi Abdullah. If their mother did not raise them on the love of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Or at least taught them the proper mannerisms of being a good, decent human being. To become a kind, loving, genuine human being. And one of the examples that we have in the religion of Islam are the women that were with Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. There were many of them. From Bibi Zainab, to Sakina, to Rabab, to al-Baneen, who was waiting eagerly in the city of Medina. Yesterday, we talked about the musibah when Bishr bin Hadlam enters the city of Medina, and he tells people that the caravan of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam is entering the city. When Bishr bin Hadlam continues the story of Ashura, and he's telling the people of Medina what happened, then Bishr bin Hadlam points to the people of Medina. He tells them, stand up and welcome your Imam. For Zainul Abidin has arrived. For the children of Rasul